firefighter saves a woman from a burning skyscraper, not knowing she is a millionaire. She falls madly in love with him. Before we get into this story, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoy millionaire CEO stories like these, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next one. The city was shrouded in smoke and chaos as flames tore through the towering skyscraper. Among the crowd of onlookers, one man stood apart. Jake, a firefighter known for his skill and calm under pressure. But beneath that composed exterior, he carried the weight of past losses, keeping his emotions tightly guarded. As Jake approached the burning building, his eyes caught sight of a desperate figure. A woman trapped behind a shattered window, her face pale with fear. Emily was shouting for help, her voice barely audible over the roar of the fire. Without hesitation, Jake gripped the cold metal beams and began his climb. The heat was intense, smoke curling around him, but his eyes never left the terrified woman in the window. As he drew closer, he could see the fear etched deep in her eyes, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Hold on, I'm coming," Jake shouted, his voice steady but urgent. Emily's voice cracked as she called back, "Please hurry, the fire's spreading fast. I don't know how much time I have." Her hands trembled as she reached out toward him, desperation clear in every movement. Jake's heart tightened, but he forced himself to stay focused. "I've got you. Just keep calm." The fire hissed around them, sending sparks flying. Emily swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "I'm so scared. I don't want to die here." Jake's gaze softened for a moment, but his tone remained firm. "You're going to be okay? I'm here to get you out." Carefully, Jake reached through the broken window and grasped Emily's arm. Her skin was clammy against his glove. She leaned into him, clutching his neck as if anchoring herself to the only lifeline in this nightmare. Their eyes met, his steady, determined, hers wide with a mix of terror and fragile hope. "Almost there," Jake murmured as he began helping her climb down. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you, you saved my life." Jake gave a quick, grim smile. "You are welcome, I'm just doing my job." Together, they descended through the flames, every second a battle against the deadly blaze. After the rescue, Jake stayed by Emily's side during the ambulance ride to the hospital, his mind racing with concern. He had done this many times before, saving lives, then following up to check on survivors. It was a routine he had kept since becoming a firefighter 8 years ago, but Emily was different. There was something about her that lingered in his thoughts long after the flames had been extinguished. At the hospital, doctors and nurses moved swiftly to treat Emily's smoke inhalation and minor burns. Jake waited in the sterile hallway, the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead and the distant beeping of monitors filling the silence. A nurse approached him, clipboard in hand. "Sir, she's stable for now, but she's resting and doesn't want any visitors," the nurse said gently. Jake nodded, respecting her wishes, but feeling a pang of worry. "If she needs anything, please let me know. I just want to make sure she's all right." Over the next 2 days, Jake called the hospital every morning, checking in as he did for every person he'd rescued. But one day, his calls were met with confusion. "Emily Thompson?" the hospital receptionist asked, frowning. "I'm sorry, but she was discharged yesterday. She left without informing the staff." Jake's heart sank. "Left without informing anyone? Did anyone say where she went?" "No, sir. She didn't leave any forwarding information." Determined to find her, Jake tried calling the number he had, but it went straight to voicemail. He visited the address listed on the emergency form, a luxurious downtown apartment, but no one there had seen or heard from her. The building manager shook his head. "No Emily Thompson here." At her workplace, a large corporation, receptionists and colleagues were evasive. Some denied she ever worked there. Others offered vague explanations. Each unanswered question gnawed at Jake. Why would she disappear like this? He wondered aloud one evening, pacing his small apartment. He replayed the rescue in his mind, the panic in her eyes, the desperation in her voice. He felt a growing suspicion that Emily was hiding something much bigger than just a fear of the fire. Let's play a little game. If you've watched this far, drop a comment below telling me what you ate for breakfast today. And while you're at it, take just a few seconds to subscribe to my channel. It would mean the world to me. Thanks so much for your support. Then, late one night, Jake received a cryptic text from an unknown number. "Stop looking for her. It's not safe. The warning only fueled his resolve. Who was Emily really? And what danger had he just saved her from? Jake's search for answers took him deeper than he ever expected. Days turned into weeks, and just when he was about to let go, a clue surfaced. A name buried in a real estate ownership database. Emily Grant, not Thompson, not even close. And not just any Emily, this one was listed as the primary stakeholder in multiple luxury properties, including the penthouse where the fire had started. Jake leaned back in his chair, stunned. "She's rich," he whispered. But that was just the beginning. Digging further, Jake unearthed news articles, old ones, about the Grant Corporation, a powerful, million-dollar family business marred by legal battles and internal betrayal. At the center of it all was a private scandal, an inheritance war. Emily, the only daughter of the late Harold Grant, had once been expected to lead the company. That was until she walked away from it all, disappearing from the public eye nearly 3 years ago after her father's mysterious death. Jake pieced it together slowly. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a target. And the fire? It may not have been random. In the shadows of the Grant family legacy were whispers of corporate sabotage, threats, and a series of accidents involving board members and executives close to Emily. She had stayed quiet, stayed hidden, until the fire forced her back into the light. Jake stared at his screen. She was never just another victim, he muttered. She was running from something, or someone. As realization dawned, a deeper concern set in. If someone had set that fire to hurt her and failed, would they try again? And more importantly, was she still in danger? Jake's instincts kicked in. He didn't just need to find her now, he needed to protect her. Jake finally found her, not in a mansion, not surrounded by guards, but quietly tucked away in a modest cabin on the outskirts of town. She was standing by the window, staring at nothing, her face pale and distant, as if she were waiting for the past to catch up to her. He didn't call her name, he just knocked. When she opened the door, her expression said it all: surprise, relief, and fear. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. Jake looked her straight in the eye. "And you shouldn't be alone." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind howled outside like it was trying to blow the truth in. "I know who you are, Emily," Jake finally said. "And I know you didn't disappear because you wanted to." Her shoulders slumped. "You don't understand." "No," he interrupted gently. "I don't, but I want to." That was the moment everything shifted. Despite her instincts to keep her distance, something in Jake's voice broke through the fortress she had built around herself. Emily stepped aside and let him in. Not just into the cabin, but into the truth. As the hours passed, Emily laid it bare. Her father's mysterious death, her stepbrother's quiet hunger for power, the threats she'd received, the documents she was too afraid to release. And the fire, it wasn't the first attempt, just the most public. Jake sat in silence for a while, absorbing every word. Then he stood up and said, "We're not running anymore." Emily blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we find out who did this, together." From that moment, they became an unlikely team. The reclusive heiress and the firefighter who couldn't look the other way. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous things became. Anonymous emails, cars that seemed to follow them, a break-in that left nothing stolen but everything out of place. One night, Jake found a note slipped under the cabin door. "Stop digging, or we'll bury you both." He showed it to Emily without saying a word. She read it, took a shaky breath, and met his eyes. "Then we're getting close." And that was the terrifying truth. They were. For weeks, Emily and Jake worked in the shadows, cross-referencing documents, quietly contacting insiders, and tracking digital footprints. The deeper they went, the more dangerous the path became. But it was also bringing them closer, not just in purpose, but in quiet, unspoken ways. Emily started to smile again, though rarely. Jake learned she drank her coffee black and always read the last page of a book first. He began to notice the way her hands trembled slightly when she was anxious, a sign she tried to hide. And she noticed how he never slept more than 4 hours, how he paced when deep in thought, how fiercely loyal he could be to someone he barely knew a month ago. But just as they were learning to trust each other, the truth tore through them like fire through timber. It started with a name: Adrian Cole. Emily mentioned him one night, over maps and fire reports. "He's the only one I really trusted after my father died." He was like family to me. He managed all of our estate contracts and ran Grand Corp's legal team. Jake paused mid-sentence. That name showed up. Here, he pointed at a printed report. Adrian Cole signed off on the insurance policy changes a week before the fire. The ones that inflated the claim value 3 times over. Emily's face went blank. That doesn't make sense. He wouldn't. Jake leaned forward. He also owns a shell company that bought up a big stake in your father's holding company right after the fire. No press, no public filing, but it's him. The silence between them grew heavy. Emily sat back slowly. Are you telling me Adrian might have tried to kill me? Jake didn't answer immediately. He didn't want to. But the evidence was piling up and he knew what it meant. I'm saying, Jake began quietly, someone you trusted more than anyone else may have been betting on you not making it out alive. The words landed like a blow. Emily stood, eyes wide in disbelief. No, Adrian was there when my father died. He helped me disappear. He told me to lay low. He was the only one who didn't ask me for anything. Jake watched her closely. Exactly, he helped you disappear, which also helped him stay in control. You trusted him. Everyone else backed off, and, in the chaos, he moved in. Emily shook her head. No, it's not him. There has to be another explanation. Jake's voice dropped. I get it. You need to believe someone was on your side, but the evidence points to him. She didn't respond. That night, Emily stayed silent. She barely touched her food. Jake wanted to comfort her, but he knew she needed space. For someone whose world was built on control, this betrayal cut deeper than any threat. The next day, Emily called Adrian. Jake listened from the next room, heart pounding. Adrian, she said softly, I need your help. Can we meet? Just like old times. His answer came too quickly. Of course, Em, always. Just tell me where. She set the meeting at her father's old estate, the one she hadn't visited since his funeral. Jake didn't like it. It's isolated, he warned, too quiet. Emily's voice was hollow. That's exactly why I chose it. They arrived together, but Emily entered alone. Jake watched from the security cameras they'd installed hours earlier. Adrian arrived, all warm smiles and concerned tones. He hugged her, like a father figure would. You look tired, Em. You okay? I've had better days, she replied. He moved through the living room like he still owned it. I'm just glad you're safe. That fire scared the hell out of me. She didn't smile. Did it? He froze for a moment. Of course it did. She stared at him. I know about the insurance policy and the shell company. Adrian blinked, then laughed, too casually. Emily, don't be ridiculous. You've been through a trauma. People are feeding you lies. I have signed documents, transfers, your signature, your company, your name. His face changed then, no longer soft, no longer friendly. You should have stayed gone. Behind the monitor, Jake's hand moved to his earpiece. I didn't want it to be you, Emily whispered, but I had to know. Adrian stepped closer, slower now. You have no idea what this empire did to me. Your father used me. I built this company with him, and when he died, I was left cleaning up a mess while you ran off to hide. I ran because someone killed him, she said. And that someone was you? Adrian snapped. Your silence killed him. At that moment, Jake stormed in, gun drawn. Back away from her, now. Adrian's eyes went cold. You again, the hero, how noble. Jake stepped between them. You're done. We have everything. Your threats, your payments, your plans. Adrian's jaw clenched. You can't prove intent. Jake smirked. Maybe not in court, but the press will eat this alive. The police took Adrian an hour later. Emily didn't say a word until they were alone in the car, driving away from the estate under a darkening sky. She turned to Jake. You were right. Jake kept his eyes on the road. I didn't want to be. She exhaled slowly, like she was finally letting go of something she'd been holding for years. You stayed, even when I pushed you away. He glanced at her. I stay when it matters. And in that silence, something else formed. Not just relief, not just closure. But the beginning of trust, built not on rescue, but on truth. Let's play a small game. If you've watched this far, tell me the first color your eyes see. Drop it in the comment section below. And while you're at it, take just a few seconds to subscribe to my channel. Only those who aren't kind won't subscribe. The days that followed were quieter, not because the danger had passed, but because the truth had settled. Adrian was behind bars. The media buzzed with headlines about betrayal, greed, and corporate corruption. Emily's name resurfaced everywhere, as the heiress who vanished and the survivor who returned. But in the stillness between the chaos, something unexpected was blooming. Jake and Emily remained in the cabin, not out of fear, but by choice. The danger had forced them together. Now, vulnerability kept them close. One evening, as rain tapped gently against the window pane, Emily sat on the worn leather couch, her knees drawn to her chest. Jake handed her a mug of tea and sat beside her. She spoke first, her voice soft. "I used to dream of running this empire, of changing the world with my father's name. But after he died, I wasn't just afraid of the people trying to take it. I was afraid of becoming them." Jake didn't interrupt. He just listened, the way no one else ever had. "I always thought money meant safety, that power could protect me." She looked at him. "But you ran into a burning building for a stranger." He gave a small, tired smile. "But I didn't know who you were." "Would you have done it if you did?" Jake didn't answer immediately. Then, with quiet conviction, he said, "I would have done it faster." Emily's eyes welled slightly, but she blinked it away. "Your turn," she said. "Tell me something you haven't told anyone." Jake stared at the fireplace, the flames reflecting in his eyes. "There was a girl," he began slowly. "Her name was Anna. My first year as a firefighter, I couldn't save her. An apartment fire. She was 12. Emily's breath caught, but she said nothing. "I found her teddy bear in the rubble. Carried it around for years," Jake continued, voice low. "I still think about her when I walk into a fire. I see her face in the smoke." Emily placed her hand gently over his. He looked down at it, then at her. "That's why I follow up with every rescue. It's not duty, it's guilt." She squeezed his hand, its heart. And in that moment, something shifted. Their bond was no longer rooted in trauma or survival. It was born of truth, raw and human. He saw the woman behind the legacy. She saw the man beneath the armor. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't running. They were healing. Together. Spring came quietly that year. The city was still healing from the fire, the one that had taken 12 stories of steel and glass and nearly taken Emily Grant's life. But in its place, something else had emerged. Clarity and a second chance. Emily stood at the top floor of her newly reopened corporate headquarters, sunlight pouring through the tall windows. She looked out at the skyline. Familiar, yet somehow different now. Behind her, staff and executives moved through the boardroom, murmuring greetings, updates, and plans. The press had already dubbed her the comeback queen, but Emily wasn't interested in headlines anymore. This wasn't about reclaiming power. It was about reclaiming herself. She turned when she heard a knock at the door. Jake stepped in, wearing a suit for the first time since she met him, though it still couldn't hide the calloused hands and the fire in his eyes. "Still fits weird," he said, tugging slightly at the collar. Emily smiled. "You look like someone who's about to turn down 3 job offers." "Only 3? They laughed, and for a moment the room felt smaller, safer. He walked to her side, following her gaze. "You ready for this?" She nodded slowly. "For the first time in years, yeah. But I'm not just walking back in. I'm changing things. No more blind trust, no more shadows behind the boardroom glass." Jake looked at her. "And if they push back?" Emily's voice was calm. "Then they can leave. The company my father built needs to stand for something again. Not fear, not silence. Something better." He studied her for a moment. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just another rich woman in trouble." She arched a brow. "And now," Jake smirked, "now I think you're trouble, with a capital T." She laughed, a real one this time, the kind that came from somewhere deep and settled. But Jake's smile faded just slightly. He turned toward the window, growing quiet. Emily noticed. "What is it?" He hesitated. "It's just, I've spent most of my life thinking people like you and people like me don't end up in the same story." She tilted her head. "Because I come from money?" "Because I come from fires," he replied. "I walk into disasters, I fix what's broken, and then I move on. I've never really stayed." Emily walked over to him, her expression soft. "You don't have to move on this time, Jake. You don't have to be the man who only shows up in crisis. You can be more than that." He looked down, then back at her. "I'm scared of what comes next." "I'm not," she said. "Not if you're beside me." And in that moment, Jake realized something. The weight he carried, guilt, loneliness, the armor he wore, it was heavy, but it wasn't permanent. For the first time in years, he could see a future not defined by what he'd lost, but by what he could build. With her. A week later, the Grant Foundation was relaunched, this time with a new mission to support survivors of emergency trauma, fund firefighter mental health programs, and create safe transitional housing for displaced families. Emily stood on the podium, delivering a speech not as a figurehead, but as a woman who had lived through the fire, literally and figuratively. Jake stood in the crowd, not as her bodyguard, not as her savior, but as her partner. He had returned to the firehouse part-time, mentoring young recruits and helping rework outdated protocols. But his world had grown wider now. It had her in it. They bought a small brownstone on the edge of the city, half-old charm, half-modern mess. Jake handled the tools. Emily handled the permits. They argued over tile colors and laughed over paint spills. It was imperfect, and it was real. On quiet nights, they would sit by the fireplace, the irony never lost on them, sipping wine or whiskey, sometimes talking, sometimes not. And in those still, silent moments, two lives that had once stood worlds apart now fit together like puzzle pieces shaped by fire, loss, and courage. Jake still had nightmares sometimes. Emily still woke in cold sweats, but when they did, they had someone to hold on to. Their story didn't end with a kiss in the ashes or a happily ever after written in bold headlines. It unfolded day by day, through vulnerability, compromise, late-night conversations, and hard choices. But most of all, it unfolded with trust. The kind that doesn't come easily, but once earned, holds stronger than steel. And so, the firefighter who never stayed, and the heiress who once vanished, learned something neither of them expected. Love doesn't always arrive with roses or fairy tales. Sometimes it climbs through the smoke and chooses to stay. I hope you enjoyed this emotional millionaire CEO story. I know you won't want to miss the next one, so go ahead and subscribe now, and don't forget to turn on post notifications. See you in the next video.